Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to our continuing series of CPDs. This time, however, we are doing something a little bit different. Now, for those of you that are regular listeners, our normal kind of webinars are always generally about like damp, rots, waterproofing, invasive weeds, etc., etc. However, off the back of recent events, COVID-19, etc., etc., this time, this CPD is all about people and really kind of focusing on building a mentally resilient workforce. I'm Andy Ferguson from the Property Care Association, and joining me in, I suppose, this anxiety-busting journey is MD, independent auditor, trainer and assessor at Atlas UK, Russell Mott. Good morning, Russell.
Good morning, Andy, and thanks for giving me this opportunity to obviously speak to your members and others in the process, and really looking forward to going through what is a very, very difficult moment, and hopefully it's going to be of help and use.
Yeah, well, we hope so too. We hope so. Folks, just kind of let you know, we're having some technical gremlins this morning just with Russell, so you might find that his picture is coming in and out at the bottom right-hand corner. He's not having a laugh with you, just hitting that camera, going off and on at the moment. It is gently technical issues, so if you do see him pop back, which hopefully will be soon, then fan dabby dozy. If you just switching back to you guys, if you are one of our regular listeners, again, a big thank you for tuning back in with us. If you are one of our new listeners, a big welcome to you. This is, again, very different to what we normally do, but again, we do hope that you get some real good valued learning from today. I just want to point you over to that if you do have any questions over the course of the webinar, how you can ask those questions. To start off with, I just want to point you over to our chat functionality. Now, if you're on a desktop or, if you're on a desktop or a laptop, you should see, depending on your settings, the chat functionality just on the left and the right-hand side. If you just want to go to the comments box, just go in there and type your question. We will get it. But equally as well, if you just want to go on there and say hello or good morning to us, tell us how you're feeling, then great. This webinar, out with any of our webinars, we're trying to encourage you more than ever to try and jump onto there. And I can see there's a couple of you that have just said hello there. Good morning, Lee, and good morning, Ian. Equally as well, if you're on a mobile device, you can do the exact same thing in terms of asking questions via the chat. All you simply need to do is just go to your screen. If you just scroll up just a little bit, you will see the chat functionality in there. Just again, simply just type in a wee hello, tell us how you're feeling, tell us where you are. If you've got any burning questions right now, then great. There is other ways in which you can reach out and chat to us also. Starting off, you can send myself an email, which I'll post to Russell, just at andy@property-care.org. That's andy@property-care.org. Or alternatively, if you are so socially savvy, you can go via our social media channels, just whatever channel you want to choose, Twitter, LinkedIn, or Facebook. Simply just go to that channel, use the search functionality that's on those channels. Just simply type in Property Care Association, and we should pop up, hopefully. Let's say the word hopefully. Just a wee heads up just to anyone. I am aware that at 9 o'clock, everyone's turning on their PCs. All of a sudden, the internet has high demand. Joe Wicks is on at 9 o'clock trying to teach the world and all kids about the physical education and jumping all about the place. It has been known that from time to time, because of the pool of internet resources and lines, that you can drop out. I just want to let you know if that does happen, there should be the functionality that comes on screen for you, a reconnect button. All you simply need to do is hit that reconnect button and you should get back online. And if anyone wants to volunteer, if you see it on the chat there and just tell people how to do it, certainly feel free to do so. Russell, I can see we've probably got about 2 minutes before we need to start in the main presentation. I suppose just like all my guests, I always like doing a wee bit of digging about, just to actually find out, about individuals. And you probably noticed I was crawling all over your LinkedIn profile last night and other wee bits and
Yes.
bobs. But I actually noticed you were a man of many talents. I mean, from what I can actually see here, you've went from being a qualified gas installer to the army to health and safety to a mental health guidesman, to possibly a part-time psychiatrist, to possibly someone that I should be really worried to talking to. I mean, what a journey that you've had in your career. I mean, that is quite a different journey. You can see I'm struggling with my words here. Oh, can you hear me? Okay, Russell. Russell.
Yeah, you dropped out slightly there, but yeah, you was definitely on a roll there. And
I was just commenting just on your journey. You've went in quite a journey from being a qualified gas installer to the army to health and safety to a mental health guidesman to possibly and maybe in the future a part-time psychiatrist. Just
yeah, I think the psychiatrist bit I'll probably park there, but it's the psychology side of things. Yes, I'm most interested in, but and that kind of ties up obviously with the mental health aspect of it as well. But yeah, it's been an interesting journey. But that diversity, I guess, kind of got me working with trade bodies, which is kind of what I've been doing for the past 10 years. So you mentioned the gas side of things. That sort of skill set sort of led me to a sort of one of the top sort of trade bodies within building services. So that's why I'm kind of my key focus as an organisation, as an individual, is serving trade bodies.
Well, I did trip across. I'm conscious of time because that is 9 o'clock. But I did trip across something really interesting last night that I need to ask you, and I need to know if it's true. But I tripped across a post last night, and it looks like were you possibly in the film Full Metal Jacket? And if it's true, please tell me you were not the one that brought in the jelly donut.
The jelly donut, I don't think I'll probably ever forget, having been very close to that scene when it was shot. But yes, it is true. It's Kubrick was very, very desperate to get good continuity and a good real feel to what he was shooting, which was done in this country, most of it. And he was struggling with extras and crowd artists with military experience. So he called on ex-reserves like me, well, I was a reserve at the time then, to come in, and we would talk the whole of the United States Marine Corps drill, and 12 months later, the film was finished, and name on credits. My claim to fame.
Wham bam, thank you, ma'am. No wonder you're mental about mental health. Yes, folks, before you say it, yes, I realise, so not funny. But but anyway, folks, if you're wondering who these two individuals here are talking about films and mental health, I'm Andy Ferguson from the Property Care Association. Joining me today is Russell Mott from ATIS UK, and a big welcome to our featured presentation today, which is all about building a mentally resilient workforce. It is literally almost that time to start. I know from certainly our perspective, Russell, here, this is an area that's frankly too little explored in our industry, and it's something that the PC has had a passion for certainly the last 12 months, and a passion for kind of driving more awareness. So I suppose the questions are over to yourself. How do we build a mentally healthy, resistant workforce for the future? And how do we manage the well-being of both not only ourselves, but also our teammates off the back of COVID-19? I mean, certainly for me, these are intriguing questions. I suppose over to yourself, and I look forward to listening to.
Sorry, Eddie, you just if you can hear me, you just dropped out for a minute, so I'm just waiting for you to come back.
Oh, right, okay. Hopefully you can hear me. I was just passing it across to yourself, Russell, just to say that big questions here in terms of mental, both not in terms of mental health, but the well-being of our staff. Intriguing questions. I'm looking forward to listening to your guidance. Over to yourself, good sir. Oh, folks, I actually think we're having some technical difficulties. Russell, can you hear me? Russell. Oh, Russell, can you hear me okay? Oh, folks, I do apologise. It looks like we're maybe having some technical difficulties.
I think we must be in that moment where everybody is draining the internet. You're still frozen my screen, Andy, hoping you'll be back very, very shortly.
Well, I think it might be your screen just at the moment, Russell, but if you want to, feel free to start your presentation and crack on, if you can hear me okay.
While I'm waiting for Andy to come back so we can get on with the presentation, just looking at some of the chat that's coming in, and just let you know that I'm taking note of that chat. Thanks, Les. Yeah, absolutely.
Folks, I'm a wee bit unsure just what's happening here just at the moment. I do apologise just regarding the delay. I'm just trying to get it sorted out. I don't know if it's myself or...
And good morning to you all too. So 78 in attendance, so that's my biggest webinar to date. So appreciate that very much. Still waiting for you to come back in, Andy.
It's
not sure what's going on there. I have full signal this end.
This is a little bit bizarre. Okay.
Okay, we're going to crack on with the presentation. Okay, so what I want to do really is just go through what we're going to cover today and try to gear this as best possible for the moment that we're actually in at the moment, literally. The first slide you'll see there is the intro slide, which is a P Company exercise in the Parachute Regiment, what they call the Pegasus Company. And really sort of message that I want to get out from the off really is whether we're individuals or whether we're in a small team or whether we're in a large organisation, the same principles apply. And knowing the strengths and weaknesses of yourself, individuals that you work with, and getting an understanding of that in the mental health environment, we kind of call that the frame of reference. But in our terms, really, it's really understanding what makes people tick, essentially. And the key message that I want to sort of drive through today really is all about trying to understand that process and making sure we get the best out of our teams and ourselves as we go through a very, very difficult, significant moment in time. A lot of this is focused around what I call the 5 aspects of life. So we have to take into consideration our thoughts, our behaviours, our emotions, the physiological factors, and the environments that we're in, both at work and at home. I kind of sort of get this all together and I like to use one of the Mental Health First Aid England sort of puns, if you like, and that's every mind matters. So I think we do need to, as we try and get back to some kind of new norm, that we really do consider everybody's position and look after ourselves in the process too. So we're going to go through pretty much today. We're going to have a little look at the aspects and impacts of what the coronavirus has brought us. So I'm an individual lone worker in effect myself, and obviously I work quite closely with a lot of trade organisations that are large, small, and different sort of entities. But as I said earlier, the same sort of principles apply. We're going to do a short little bit of sort of getting back to work safely. I've already been doing quite a bit of work with those that are concerned about how they get back to work safely, including travel to and from work. Big thing for today really always, it's all about resilience, and I think understanding resilience is an absolute catalyst in keeping ourselves in a very, very strong physical and healthy moment as we fight our fears and get back to work as best we can. Also, I'm sure it's going to be applicable to some, certainly is for me, working from home or in isolation. So if we're working from home, we might have other family members there. We could be in the office working remotely or on our own as well. And also we're going to look at facing our fears. So we're going to sort of try and trigger some feedback from you guys as we go through the presentation. And obviously we'll try and focus on any of those fears. So I want it to have some relevance to you all if possible. And then we're going to finish up with just a general sort of dealing with mental health issues and kind of next steps really. So that's kind of the foundation of what we're going to go through today. So I think the subject being mental health, and we've got a quite significant number of you guys joining us this morning. So I really want you to be honest and open with me for this, and I'm hoping Andy's going to run this poll for me in the background. But how are we actually feeling today? And I've gave you sort of 4 options there, and hopefully the poll will come through shortly.
Yes, well, hopefully, Russell, you can hear me okay just at the moment. Give me a wee nod if you can. Can you hear me okay,
Okay,
Russell?
just looking at the poll now. Just give that a couple more seconds. Well, it's shifting a little bit, but the general feel is that we're pretty much in good spirits and we're happy and ready for anything. We're shifting around a little bit. Okay, but could be better is kind of creeping and taking the head at the moment. The good news is we've only a few that perhaps feel not great today, and maybe a very, very small percentage, absolutely. So the general gist seems to be fairly even. So we're all in fairly good spirits this morning, which is great to see. So happy and ready for anything, and okay, but could be better. If I was honest with myself, I'd probably be in okay, but probably could feel better. I could have done with a better night's sleep last night, but lots going on. Obviously, I've got anxious about this morning's presentation. Okay, Andy, I trust you probably will be able to finish that poll, and I will move on. Excellent. Okay. So, aspects and impacts of COVID-19. I'm hoping Andy's going to take a track on any chat that comes in. I'm presuming that I'm all loud and clear and you can still hear me. It would be good if someone can just give me a confo of that, Andy. See, we seem to be having a few mic issues. I don't know if that's myself. All loud and clear. Thank you. Let's crack on. Okay, so really, as we brace ourselves for what is a new norm, this is a current moving target all the time, and I'm no different to you guys. I'm changing my continuity planning and how I'm going to do things and connect with clients because it's forever changing and we're tracking that. But the key thing I want to kind of get through this is with a lot of organisations, you've heard the key workers and the NHS frontline staff, you've heard the talks on the news, I'm sure you have, with regard to the post-traumatic impact of frontline workers and key staff. But what's becoming more apparently from other organisations such as Mind and even IOSH, my professional body from a health and safety point of view, is that there is a general concern now that actually post-trauma is going to be a significant moment for us all as we try and work through this. So the message that I'm clearly getting from very, very recognised and professional body organisations is if we don't start planning now and start putting some basic fundamental pieces in place to manage our workforce and ourselves, just when we're ready to sort of bounce back, we could be suffering that post-trauma effect. Now, I'm sure some of you have probably been out on the road when we done some of the construction toolbox talks on mental health last year, where PTSD often gets related straight back to the armed forces and stuff like that. Well, we will see significant figures, particularly with frontline workers and key staff going forward. So key message there is if we've got to understand in our continuity planning now that we need to be able to plan for the future so we're not caught out. And just as we're in a good recovery moment, the resilience of our workforce could be hindered, and that's going to have an impact on our recovery. So we're going to be looking about understanding those fears as well. We'll cover that a little bit more later on, but I'm going to need your help to kind of let me know what those fears potentially are. We're going to be looking at how we can implement and build some resilience. We're going to focus a core chunk of the sector of the webinar on building that resilience and understanding it. And I'm sure you'll be familiar with some of the terminology I'll be using in that moment. But it's building all that together so we can actually promote recovery. Okay, so addressing our fears and building confidence. For me, this is all about communication, and you will hear me say on many occasions that communication and listening non-judgmentally is absolutely key. Only yesterday did I experience an issue that really does stress me somewhat, in how some organisations are managing furlough, for instance, where they've got furloughed staff and they're all panicking, trying to get the wheels of the wagon turning again and get business back. We all understand that, but destroying your workforce in the process is not probably the best thing to do. So there are ways to manage, and this is all really about listening. And that's, you've probably seen all the Mental Health First Aid England and other organisations that promote such, that obviously listening non-judgmentally and consultation is really key here. So we want to try and everybody's going to be different. We mentioned that you could be working alone, as I am. In fact, whilst I was putting this presentation together, I kind of told myself off somewhat, because I wasn't actually practicing what I was preaching myself. So I took some hints from the process of putting this presentation together on myself. So and that was a learning point for me too. So communication, consultation, finding ways to know and understand how to manage returning to work. If we don't talk to the workforce, or we don't relate to ourselves in what are our issues, and we don't reflect on that, we are going to be raising our anxiety levels. We are going to be putting additional stress on ourselves and potentially others. So installing confidence, Andy mentioned earlier about the sort of psychology side of things that I've studied within the sort of armed forces environment. Very interested in micro-expression, body language, stuff like that, and being very open and talking. You probably seen both Andy and I using, I'm exaggerating, my hand gestures now. I'm trying to make eye contact and talk to the camera. I'm trying to use those sort of skills. So installing confidence and using psychology to give the team a level of reassurance. So when we talk about using psychology, you know, it's all about emotional reasoning and content, and getting to understand people, so you can use emotional reasoning to kind of influence, if you like, someone to perhaps do what you need them to do, and that remains for yourself too as well. So just by understanding where a person is, or what their background is, or what their concerns are, can give you an edge and can help build some strength and some resilience in your team. Dealing with phobias, I put phobias in there deliberately because subject is kind of how we drift through the rest of the presentation and what we get through chat and a few other polls. You know, we may want to talk about those towards the end of it, because we must understand that in the world of mental health, which we all have, it's just a question of where we sit within the continuum, is we all have mental health. We all have to manage that aspect. There are many disorders related to mental health, which we can talk about a little bit later, and obviously try and signpost and give you some more information if that's the case. So, but the message really here is if we're going to be dealing with phobias, if we don't consult with the workforce, so someone that's, you know, fearful of coming back to work, can't quite understand social distances, may have even had the bereavement through coronavirus and lost a loved one. We don't understand that, and we don't sort of try and gauge where the anxiety is, or where phobias could be creeping in. You're going to bring someone back to work and probably just increase and probably lose them at the moment when you most need them. So I kind of mentioned a few times, so this is going out to chat, so I've just opened up the chat column. I'm checking that now. I'm presuming everybody's still got me loud and clear. I mentioned communication. I mentioned about listening non-judgmentally, and I've got quite a sort of background in this area, particularly around sort of the leadership and management kind of stuff, and also with Mental Health First Aid England. Part of the 2-day course for the first aid, we'd spend quite a bit of time on listening skills. So sorry, this is a poll that we're going to put out to you. So let's take another quick poll. Hopefully Andy's going to drop in polls. I'm going to change back over to poll. And I can see Andy, my wingman, as always, is right where he needs to be on that. And we're looking at that poll. Let's give it a few more seconds. So we're looking about, what do you think is the best means of communication? Verbal or non-verbal? And we're very, very strong on verbal at the moment.
Russell, just checking.
Andy, I'll sort of let you end that poll as and when you see fit. I'm just tracking it now. So drifting around 80% verbal and 20% non-verbal.
Russell, just checking if you can hear me, folks. I do apologise about any kind of technical issues, just where we're...
a slight shift, not by much though. So we're pretty much 80-20 on verbal, non-verbal. So I think we can end the poll now and have a quick discussion on that. Very, very interesting, and pretty much as I thought it would be. But actually, it's the other way around. 70% of our communication skills are non-verbal. And it's very, very important to recognise that. You know, we do need verbal communication, but micro expressions, body language, these hand gestures, eye contact, stuff like that are absolutely essential in particularly trying to get someone to relax, or if you want to use a very strong sort of verbal approach. Your communication skills with what you're doing with your body language are going to make all the difference. And from a psychology point of view, the rule of thumb is 70% of communication skills are delivered non-verbally. And these are very influential on the psychology side. I was very privileged to work with the Metropolitan Police some years ago when I was doing a course within the Army environment for the main trainer for the Metropolitan Police, where they train all of their interviewers when they're interviewing crime on micro expressions and body language, because they can pretty much almost tell if someone's lying by minor expressions. So interesting poll, but the message there is, you know, our non-verbal skills are absolutely essential, and we work remotely at this moment. We're talking remotely at now. How we present ourselves and how we get those sort of micro expressions and body language while we're talking to people is absolutely critical. If I was hands on my desk like so and just looking away, I'm not going to get your attention at all. Exaggerating that slightly, but good eye contact, good expressions, communication, and listening judgmentally. So excellent poll there, and I'm hoping that that's kind of giving you some value, and perhaps you could potentially think how you could probably change how you communicate and perhaps influence and perhaps get the better out of someone. Okay, just going to check on the chat very quickly just to make sure there's nothing there that I need to be aware of, as I've lost comms with Andy at the moment. Okay. Okay, so we're going to go into chat now. So we're going to drift into resilience now. So just give us a quick one-liner on what do you think resilience means to you? What does it kind of trigger? Short and sweet, answers in the chat when you're ready, please. That will be great, and we'll have a quick look at what comes up.
Folks, just while I'm kind of padding out between Russell here, I do apologise about the technical issues. I think Russell can't hear me at the moment in time his side. I'm glad to
getting some feeding through now. Thanks, Bernadette. Appreciate that. So, Gordon, keep at it. Stay in power, John. Excellent. Well done. Maddie, being able to cope when things are going well. Toughness. Get some really interesting ones here. Keep that going just for a few more seconds, guys. That would be great. Focus on the end game. Ability to adapt. Being able to cope in a changing environment. Some really good, excellent Chat's coming in here, guys. Well done. Keeping things in context. Yeah, good one. Ability to cope. So we've got cope coming out quite a bit now, which is really, really good. Being adaptable. To keep going. Paul, I like that one. To keep going when there's technical issues. Yeah, I can feel that one, definitely. Keeping things, yeah, okay, being adaptable. Lots of coping coming out, which is good. Excellent. Okay. Well, if you look it up in the dictionary, it pretty much means the ability to bounce back. So I kind of, there is a bit of a seamless link going on through these slides as well, which I may challenge you for a question later if we get time. But I just want to pop on to great leaders, inspiring quotes. So the ability to bounce back, that a lot of the stuff that came in is still coming in. Yeah, some really, really good ones there. Excellent. I always use this one because I'm a big fan of Sir Winston Churchill. Success is not final, failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts. So that's kind of that ability to bounce back factor. And in the mental health environment, we use Sir Winston's Black Dog scenario video because Sir Winston suffered with Great Depression. And there's the resilience of what Sir Winston delivered, obviously, through a moment of crisis that we won't tap into because you all know what that was and when and how he coped with that. And the way he managed that, the way he showed great leadership and inspiring others around him when the country needed him the most. And there's a really, really good example of resilience. Okay, so we're going to look at resilience in some depth. So we're going to understand the 5 pillars of resilience. Now, you've probably, if you've done a Google search on this, you'd probably get various things that come in from this. But the 5 pillars that I use, I think, are very, very essential. So again, I'm just going to reiterate that it's really important that we be mindful of ourselves within this moment, because, you know, if we're showing our stresses and weaknesses to a team, and that could be even family members, then that anxiety is going to cascade and potentially get out of control and not help the situation. So let's look at the 5 pillars briefly. We're going to look at self-awareness, which is absolutely massive in this. Mindfulness. Now, I'm not going to talk too much on mindfulness, sheerly because we kind of covered that in the mental health side, but I just want to try and lead and give you some hints and tips on how we can use mindfulness to manage ourselves and others. Probably, in my opinion, the most important, because it's the easiest to lose, is self-care. Guilty as charged often, but I do get myself back on track when I'm burning myself out sometimes. Relationships are absolutely critical in this process because, you know, relationships can put additional pressures on us, whether they're at work or at home. And obviously purpose is absolutely massive. If we can't give someone purpose, aims and objectives, then it's kind of, well, what's it all about then? So there's our 5, understand the 5 pillars of resilience and having the key skills and ability to bounce back. So we're going to, without further ado, cruise into the next slide. So this is one that I really think is very, very important. Self-awareness. What do we mean by self-awareness? Self-awareness, in my opinion, is probably going to be what our core values and standards are in ourselves. Now, a lot of organisations have their own core values and standards now, and they involve large workforce. So bigger companies that have got the resources to do this would probably consult with their workforce, and they'd get their kind of values and standards and use that as a sort of business model. But I don't want to go too much on larger organisations because I want to be mindful that, you know, we've probably got a few individuals here that are working through this moment as well. So the signposts there clearly say it now. Respect, honesty, integrity. I mean, they are 3 of the British Army's core values, and a lot of organisations use the foundations of that. So I think it's really important to be self-aware and make sure that your core values, whatever they may be, are there for yourself, and you can project those to others, because it's all about leading by example in this case. So it's important to know what our core values are, and if we analyze ourselves very, very quickly, we would find what means the most to us, and they are very personal. So self-awareness, understanding our own core values and standards. So I wasn't going to go too deep into mindfulness, because we'll save that a little bit for later, when there might be some techniques and hints and tips that I can give you on managing this. But this is a slide that we use in mental health first aid training. Mindfulness means paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. I mentioned I would say non-judgmentally several times. Absolutely really critical, being in the moment. I always use an example that I think some people probably think I am, pardon the pun, mad sometimes. But we can, how many of us, I'm pretty much sure most of us, at some point have driven from said A to B and thought, how did I get here? I don't remember any of it. We're in autopilot mode. And there's a typical example of not being in the moment. So if we're not in the moment, we're not focused and we're not paying attention. So mindfulness, for obviously one of the pillars to promote that resilience, is absolutely massive, because it means you're promoting focus within yourself, and that will rub off onto others. Neural pathways, doing the simplest of things and being mindful. Cleaning your teeth is a really good example. We do this all in autopilot. Yeah, have we ever tried a new neural pathway by actually trying to clean our teeth with the left hand instead of the right for once, or breaking these patterns that we do so unmindfully? Eating mindfulness is a good one. Drinking mindfulness is a good one. You know, that first beer after a tough day, that first glass of wine after a tough day, be in the moment, you know, taste it, enjoy it. They say when we eat, we should chew 20 times just to tell our stomach that we need to digest it, but we don't. We tend to sort of rush, not give ourselves the time. You only have to be mindful for a few minutes of the day to maintain a very, very sort of focused and calm approach. And from experience, this is one of the foundations of being calm and collective, and being able to manage people and yourself. So being in the moment and being mindful is an art, but it's one I would suggest that if you haven't got some form of mindfulness techniques on the go now, then perhaps it's time to look into them. Okay, so self-aware, mindfulness. Let's look at the next pillar. I mentioned this as being probably the most important, and I think it is, because it's the same old cliche. If we go back to physical first aid, the first thing we do is check for danger. We don't want to put ourselves in harm's way. We can't be a good leader. We can't promote resilience. We can't communicate as well if we're not looking after ourselves. And I don't really need to dwell on this subject. We're all guilty of probably not looking after ourselves enough. But it's one of those pillars. It's one of those foundations that if we can't take time to look at self-care, okay, then, you know, we're losing that edge slightly on ourselves, and again we'll lose our focus, and we won't be able to promote that resilience in the process as well. You know, we've got to practice what we preach as well. So self-care. Okay, next up, relationships. So important, and I don't want to sort of drift into relationships at work or at home in any depth, but you know, if we look at the statistics that we suffer in the construction sector, where 2 construction workers take their own life every single working day, there's underlying factors in that in most cases. So many may well have a mental disorder that's already been there, maybe from childhood or through a recent trauma. But other factors such as relationships have a massive impact on how we feel and how our cognitive behaviour, you know, what our thoughts and our feelings and our behaviours are. And, you know, if you're in a relationship at home that is perhaps not in a good moment, and for instance, we've seen domestic violence boost within this moment, because relationships aren't all good. Some can be fragile. And again, this is going to contribute to getting back to work. There could be significant factors in here, and open up the communication and talking to those, or being mindful ourselves, is absolutely critical in this process. So relationships must be considered. And working relationships too as well. You know, how often have we been in a work scenario? I certainly have been in one some years ago, which was very stressful to manage, where just two people just don't get on. And sometimes that happens, but that can have a massive impact on our ability to cope. So it's fundamental that we should recognise that relationships can have a significant effect. Purpose. I think this is absolutely critical as we sort of try and pull ourselves back from this moment. So I mentioned earlier that moving target. We really do need to have some strong aims and objectives. You know, a workforce, an individual worker, a small team, a large organisation will all have to do the same thing. And I think aims and objectives are absolutely massive. I said to Andy jokingly this morning, I'll let you work out for yourselves. In the army, we use the 6 Ps, which is all about planning and performance. You know, if the planning's not good, the performance isn't going to be good either. So it's absolutely critical that we look at that. Behind me, you actually see, this is nothing to do with today. This was some training that I was doing remotely more recently. You're probably all familiar with the PDCA model, the Plan, Do, Check, Act model, that goes through all of our international standards, such as 9001, 14001, 1845,001, Plan, Do, Check, Act. It's on the HSE's website with regard to manage our health and safety issues. So planning, doing, checking, acting. I'm just trying to really promote a very, very strong ethos of, as we pull ourselves back, the more organised we are and the more continuity planning that we do, the more chance that we've got of building that resilient workforce. Really, really good for individuals as well. For me personally, I've used the analogy of smart thinking. I'm sure most of you are probably aware of that. But again, it doesn't take a moment of time to just remind ourselves, actually, let's not give someone that may be very anxious in coming back to work an unrealistic target just because we need to get the wheels turning quicker. Let's be mindful of it, and let's actually, you know, through that consultation process and to promote their well-being and health and to help the business recover, you know, use the smart thinking, which is all about making the aims and objectives of individuals and organisation specific, measurable, achievable, realistic and time bounding. I use this absolutely all the time, mainly for my own planning, but it works. It absolutely works. And another one of my favourites at the top, which I'll just throw in, wasn't planning to do so, is what is the OODA loop, which is all about decision making. So you'll see that slide there. Let's not get on in a faff and a fuddle about trying to manage all these difficult moments as we try and recover. Let's be smart about it, and let's promote good quality decision making. So OODA loop is all about observing, orientating around to what you're going to be doing, deciding and acting. And it's called a loop because it's an ever-going loop. Okay, decision making is not always going to be right, but using this analogy, if you get that first decision wrong and you're constantly orientating yourself around the problem, you can decide and act to make another decision. And again, something that I use quite often and works very well. So we've kind of gone through most of these foundations of the of promoting resilience, and I'm hoping that, you know, whilst you probably were familiar with some of these pillars of the 5 pillars, that you may have actually got something new that you can bring to the table and, you know, help manage yourself and others and promote that strong resilience in the workforce. So I think it's time for another poll. I'm sure you're fed up with my dulcet tones now, so I'll give a quick break and over to the poll. We'll open that up. So as we gear for the new norm, the new normality, what will be your likely position? I see Andy is hopefully on the case with the poll.
Yeah, and hopefully you might be able to hear me at the moment, folks. Well, I'm just going to speak in between the gap.
Excellent. Thanks, Andy.
I'm just trying to speak in the gaps of Russell just at the moment, folks. We do apologise about the technical issues. Russell, for some reason, can't hear me. But if you want the poll to pop up on the screen at the moment, if I do stop
So
talking,
yeah, we're so quite a few working from home, me included in that. Some back in the office, potentially could be shift patterns. On site with others fairly low, probably a good thing. On site alone at times, and not many furloughed or unsure. So strong working from home, definitely coming out through the poll. So about 54% working from home, and then some in the office, and some on site alone at times are the two others. Okay. So working from home, that's really good because I want to try and steer some hints and tips to the majority of you guys and what you're doing. So, okay, Andy, that's great. We can end that poll. Excellent. So working from home. So really, this is just conscious of time. So I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. I'm just going to get back to my chat just so I can keep an eye on things. Paul's presentation is frozen again. Use the reconnect button at the top of the screen. So hopefully I'm just going to pause for a moment and hopefully we can get you all back. Yep, okay, good. So hints and tips from working from home and lone working. For me, mindfulness is absolutely critical in this as well. I myself practice what I preach, as I said earlier. Just taking short breaks, but create the space first. As I sit with you this morning, probably not as tidy as I would like here in my office, but I've got the space laid out how I want it. It just promotes a healthy ethos for working from home. Absolutely critical to take some short breaks. I was working on this presentation last night and probably should have given myself a few more breaks in the process, but I did. I had mindful moments where I reflected back on, give myself some headspace, and just take a couple of deep breaths. Very easy to be keeping your discipline at working from home is absolutely critical. I'm fortunate I've been doing it for quite a while. I'm already remote auditing and training as we go through sort of June and pick up in July. And that works quite effectively, but you need to be disciplined. So create the space and take a break is absolutely critical. And be mindful, going out and grabbing your coffee, your tea, having a mid-morning break, make it a mindful break, just sit in the garden and watch the clouds go by and just take a few deep breaths. It doesn't take much. If you do a few of those micro mindfulness breaks, you will remain much more focused, and also very easy to stop breathing properly and hyperventilate when you're engrossed on a project and working from home, when you've got no other forms of communication flying around you. So be mindful, but also take ergonomics into factor as well. Is try and just be a bit. We should be doing, obviously, if we're working from home, hopefully your organisations, or if you're like me on your own, you've done some kind of ergonomic sort of display screen adaptation to your working from home procedures. But clear that space, take a break, be mindful, look at your ergonomics, manage your distractions as best you can. A lot of us are working in unprecedented times. I've done video conferences with clients whereby there's been background noises. They're just unavoidable, but we just need to be aware of that and manage it, and communicate with others, even if it's using video conferencing and stuff like this. It takes 2 seconds if you're alone just to take that mindful break and perhaps just do a WhatsApp chat or something, and touch base with the son, daughter, parents, whatever. So just try and manage the situation, because working from home has its advantage, but it needs discipline and it needs managing. Okay, so let's have another quick chat. For this one, What is your biggest fear in getting back to work? So sort of short, sweet answer. I'll track the comments as they come in, and we're trying to sort of finish the presentation kind of with dealing with what your kind of biggest fears are, and we'll see what comes from that. So far away, please, when you're ready.
Folks, just again, padding in between, just well, Russell is waiting for responses. Just simply go to the chat and tell us
what is your biggest fear.
Again, just go to the chat, folks. Just go to the comments button. Let us know what you think.
Yeah, started to ping in now. Workload, absolutely. You know, that is going to be fairly critical, and all of the skills that we've just covered in promoting that resilience approach that are all there to help manage that. No one's going to say it's going to be easy. Childcare, cool. Yeah, there's so many different factors in this moment, isn't there? Catching the virus, yeah, that's definitely a big fear. The amount of backlog, yeah, lots of backlog. Social distancing, and I know this is an issue from many of the organisations that I work for, and I've seen some horrors out there, and I won't name and shame some of the organisations that can't manage something as simple as social distancing. It's not rocket science, but it is difficult if we're put in these situations where we can't control it. Absolutely. Yeah, so I think what's coming out, we've clearly got this kind of fear, haven't we, of the environment that we're going to go back into, how it's going to be managed, you know. Yeah, still looking at a few more coming in. There's a very strong theme of going back, and, you know, we don't want to get this virus. We know it's a deadly virus. We're in a global pandemic. We've every right to be fearful of it. Yeah, okay. Well, I think the theme is fairly good there. So a lot of us are working from home. We've kind of established that through the process. And I guess we'll just sort of see the presentation out and the webinar out really based on that fear factor. And I think we'll have to just round that all up into pretty much what I would say is more about social distancing and not getting the virus, because we've got so contained. I mean, I was one of the early ones that self-isolated because I had signs and symptoms way back in March. I have a type 1 diabetic here, so that had to be managed, and we saw that through. And now all of a sudden we've got to go back into an environment that we're all quite scared of. So I think the main feature here, based on what you're all saying there and conscious of time, is that it's all going to be around anxiety. It's all going to be addressing our fears. Now, I've got down here the public transport and logistic aspect of it as well. I'll see if Andy wants to sort of ping any questions out, but I'm quite happy to probably take them myself due to the tech issues that we're having. We're kind of looking at the fears and phobias and other mental health disorders that this could bring. And I go back to where I started and kind of summarise. You know, if we don't take this moment and build that resilience in ourselves and in others and promote that, you know, we are going to take the anxious moment that we're in, and our anxiety will increase. And when you're anxious and your levels of anxiety do get unhealthy, you know, you could start drifting into underlying health issues and disorders that are quite common, you know, panic attacks and stuff like that. So I'll reflect back to mindfulness yet again. Yes, you know, we're all under a massive workload, and I think how we manage that, and hopefully you've picked some hints and tips up with regard to, you know, building that resilience in yourself and others that you can use now. And I'm sure there'll be questions that perhaps Andy and I can discuss post webinar, and maybe give some feedback as well due to these sort of tech issues as well. So I think that's our core focus, really. I'm going to drift straight into kind of the sort of finish slide now. And, you know, this is not a training video. This is a webinar that's just built about building that resilience and building a healthier and mindful workforce. But, you know, I don't want you to leave this webinar not knowing what to do if you may have a self issue or you want to help someone else. You know, it's good to talk and listen judgmentally. We don't talk and we don't communicate we're not going to get the best from our workforce. We're just going to make the situation worse in 6 to 9 months' time, just when we need, and hopefully the economy gets back on its feet. Be mindful of what's available. Large organisations, employer assistance programs, what we call is an EAP. We can trigger these resources. Mind is probably, in my opinion, the Mind website. The current president is Stephen Fry. The resources on Mind are just never ending. You can find out about yourself, learn to manage anxiety. It's a fantastic resourceful tool. And we've got some links, useful links coming up as well. For those that may be struggling to cope and are in a position where, immediate help is needed, then the Samaritans offer that 24/7. And that would be my advice, is to just signpost anybody or yourself, make that call, don't put it off, and deal with the issues. Obviously, GP referrals are somewhat difficult at this moment, but that's another resource. And there are many, many, many others. But again, key message here, if we can build resilience, we'll become resourceful, and we will be productive just when we need it as we get back to work and we have that ability to bounce back. But if we go blinkered, unmanaged and blind, we're not taking the opportunity now to build for the future. And that's kind of where I kind of want to finish on a high. It's doable, it's manageable, but we've got to look at ourselves, and we've got to help each other. We have to be compassionate. We have to listen non-judgmentally, and we need to manage ourselves in the process too. Okay, just looking at the chat now. Steve, what can the PCA do to help members to work through the aftermath of the crisis? I guess that's for us all. So if you want to ping anything that's a little bit more sort of personal, bespoke to your scenario, and we're happy for still a few minutes out in the Q&A session, I'm more than happy to keep an eye on the chat and see what we can do.
Well, hello, folks. I do apologise.
Just having a little look through these now.
For any kind of issues that we're having technically wise at the moment. For some reason, Russell just can't seem to hear me.
Andy's trying to communicate with me, I think. We moved onward to the last slide.
But we do apologise here. Hang on, I'm just trying to get...
Just trying to see if I can see. Yeah, there's so much on timescales and stuff coming in, and we're all in the same boat with this. I think we've covered so much of this, and are in a position where we can look at those 5 pillars of resilience. We can learn to become mindful. My greatest sort of line that I always say, I never multitask. Why would I want to multitask? I do one thing at a time. I use my OODA loop. I orientate myself, observe, orientate, decide, and act, and we can manage things a lot more healthier. Get things off the worry tree that we don't need to worry about, and focus. Being focused is absolutely critical. To be focused, you need to be mindful.
Hi, folks. Here, I'm just trying to.
Something's happened to my speaker. Okay.
I'm just trying to reach out to Russell just at the moment.
Over to you, Andy. I can't hear you.
Yeah, no, Russell. No, I hear that. We do apologise here because it's a bit. I have no idea what's going wrong here. There seems to be something that's going wrong with Russell's speaker just at the moment in time. It's probably going to mean that we really can't do kind of questions at the moment. I do apologise, folks, just on that, because I have received four questions actually sent via my email, and I know there's 2 via the questions functionality at the moment as well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually get Russell just to respond to those questions just via email just afterwards, and well, via email or via call as well. So again, do apologise that we can't really go through the questions just at the moment.
I'm just firing up my phone, Andy. If you can hear me, I can't hear anything at the moment.
Oh, right. Okay. Well,
so I'm going to go over to the phone. So please feel free to call me.
Okay, well, folks, I do apologise because poor Russell and I were actually kind of talking to each other, but I'm just going to give him a wee heads up.
Yes, some good feedback. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate that.
Hold on a minute. Hello, Russell.
I've got you on speaker, Andy. I'm going to just turn my headset off.
No, I'm just
to kind of let me know.
The audience can hear
the both of us, but for some reason you can't hear me.
I think
there's something that's going wrong.
The speaker. I think we're just having
some technical issues here, but they can both hear us
fairly
clearly.
Now, what I'm going to do is
just because of the technical issues,
I'm going to shut off the phone.
Just at the moment because there's a double loop.
And I will fire any questions.
Okay. I will fire any questions over to yourself via email.
Okay.
Yep, there we go.
I monitor email as well.
Well, folks, here, just as I said there, I do apologise that we're not able to do questions just at the moment, but I will get that over. But for those of you looking for additional information, you heard Russell mention it there. I mean, there's 5 certainly main resources you can go and look for information there. I'm not going to go over them again because Russell kind of went over them there. But also, and additionally as well, for those that are a wee bit unaware, we have been pulling together a mental health first aid training course. Some of you will be aware of it, some of you won't. It's actually been led by Russell himself. Now, we've not got a date in just at the moment, just simply because of COVID-19. However, if you are interested, please do get in touch. Telephone numbers up there. Contact Jade and Amber at our training team, just on 01480 400 000, and they will be able to update you a little bit more. Just to let you know what's coming up next. Our next webinar, we continue next week in our CPD series. This time it's all about getting to grips with giant hogweed, which is being led by our friend Professor Max Wade. For you to sign up on that, URL is just on the screen there. It's just www.property-care.org/webinars. Just go on there, the link's on there, and you'll be able to kind of sign up. But we also have other webinars that are coming on very shortly afterwards. We have one based on ventilation, which has been led by our very own Berry, and we also have the one a week after, which is being held by our very own CEO, Steve Hodgson. So watch this space very shortly for those actually coming up. Last but not least, I know Russell can't hear me right now, but I just want to say a very, very big thank you to Russell for that presentation. I'm really sorry, Russell, that we couldn't do questions with you, but certainly I'll make sure to get them over to you. In addition, I want to say, more importantly, a big thank you to you guys for certainly tuning in to us. It's a very different webinar than what we normally do. Sorry about the technical issues, but certainly any questions you've got, we'll certainly make sure we'll get resolved. Lastly, well, it really does leave for me to say just a big thank you again for tuning in, and hopefully you guys have a lovely rest of the day. So goodbye from me, goodbye from Russell, goodbye all.